I think the question is, at what point in time, and the videography is difficult to kind of assess without it being super enhanced and whoever enhances it and all that stuff. So at what point in time did this?
I actually wanted to ask, so we obviously can't put this on the screen, Deef, but can you actually get the video, the main one that everyone
While he's
saw?
pulling up, can I ask you one more question about the shirt?
Please.
Absolutely.
So different angles of the event seem to show, some of the angles seem to show that there might have been a hole punctured in the shirt. I can't tell if that's like a little drop of blood that came out,
right,
or if it's, like a little drop of blood came out of the wound and fell on the exterior of the shirt, or when the shirt came up and did that kind of violent display up into the wound, did it touch it and make a little red that came through? If there's a hole in the shirt, what would that tell you?
Well, if there's a hole in the shirt, scientifically, you would have to put forth the idea that something passed through it. I mean, that's kind of an obvious statement, but does it marry up? And where you're going with this, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where you're going with this is if this is married up, and that, because clothing is very dynamic. It's so weird, guys, if you have somebody that's wearing like loose-fitting clothing. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good.
When you're wearing loose-fitting clothing and you're trying to assess defects in the clothing and trying to match them up with like defects in the skin, it's a kind of a treacherous journey sometimes because the two things just don't meet. You think about Trayvon Martin, for instance. I've talked about him extensively. When he was shot, Trayvon Martin was shot. George Zimmerman, when he discharged that weapon, Trayvon Martin's hoodie, the infamous hoodie, fell away from the body. Well, when the firearms examiner examined the hoodie, his assessment was this was a contact gunshot wound. When the forensic pathologist examined Trayvon Martin's body, and you can actually go and read the autopsy report, that body arrived at the facility nude. That clothing had already been removed. So when the forensic pathologist looked at that and they did their assessment, you know what he said? Indeterminate range. Just like I was talking about the distance thing. So to try to go into clothing, if you have like a defect in it, a hole in the clothing itself, on the collar or wherever it is, I want to see the shirt. That's why, nothing is left to chance. And
I don't think it's clear what it is, but it's a dot that appears. And I remember day one or two, I looked at that and thought, wow, how did a gunshot wound that arrives at his neck make a hole in his shirt? It could be blood, and blood's interesting relative to distribution and kind of how it ebbs forth from a defect like this. We saw this kind of, I think the question is, at what point in time, and the videography is difficult to kind of assess without it being super enhanced and whoever enhances it and all that stuff. So at what point in time did this, I don't know, anomaly or whatever you want to call it, at what point in time did it appear? Right.
I think that's a salient question.
There was something I was thinking when you were describing, Baron, what was the word they said? Traumatically destroyed?
Traumatically absent.
Traumatically absent. Okay. So you and I had also talked about how, and I think it was related to that, but correct me if I'm wrong, this would suggest that the spinal cord was completely detached from the brain, which means that there would be no signaling hypothetically coming from the brain. You talked with a neurosurgeon, I believe, about this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we obviously can't play this on the screen, Deef, but for us in the room right here where we can see this, let's make that full screen for a second, Deef. So all we're doing, people off cameras, we're watching the video that unfortunately everyone saw last year where you see the shooting. So just let that play for one sec, Deef. Okay. So he gets hit and he still fences. His body comes up, the muscles tense in the elbow and everything. And what you were saying, Baron, that I think is pretty fascinating is that hypothetically, if your brain was completely disconnected upon the shot from your system, how did you describe it? Your body just completely goes...
Well, he said it would go flaccid. He said you have about a tenth to a tenth and a half of a second of motor control, and then you'll lose all muscle tone, everything will go flaccid. Well, and then I went back and timed this, and it's well over a second that he's holding onto that microphone. So I asked him, I said, could he have, just held onto the microphone? He said, no, the hand would have just opened. It would have immediately, gravity would have taken over the whole body. And he said, I can't reconcile that with the injuries that are described.
So if we watch,
but that's just one man's opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's a neurosurgeon as well. So, he deals with this stuff. If we see this again, just in real time, so he's hit and there's still muscular action. It's still up all the way to the ground. That's about, I'm eyeballing it. That's 2.5 seconds or so right there. So that would be far more than, what was it, a 1/10 of a second to a 1/10.5 of a second?
Yeah.
Is that interesting to you?
Yeah, it kind of is. Also, going to the mic, you can see the mic kind of fall away there. And if I can just address this for a second.
Like you're saying, in here, we can't.
Yeah.
Like in there, fall away?
The lapel mic or the SM58 he's holding?
The one he's holding.
Okay.
Yeah, there. That's what I was referring to. He just, eventually it falls away from his hand. And I don't know how exacting that is as far as, but I'll tell you this, we, in our world, in the medical legal world, we handle far more, see how I can use this so it didn't get edited out. We handle far more self-harm, firearm-related events. And I...
Thanks for helping thanks for not TOS bombing the podcast.
Jesus, these people, man, I tell you what. God.
I was sitting here like, where's he? Oh.
I know. It makes me want to drive my head through a brick wall sometime. Anyway, people always believe that when there is a self-inflicted inflicted event to the head, that automatically individuals drop a handgun. They don't. I come across as many people that are still holding handguns as we're not. People will continue to hold them, after death, after this. And I've seen everything from intraoral to, I've seen, obviously temporal shots, frontal. I've seen people do occipital shots, inverted weapons like this, beneath the chin, everything. And so they don't necessarily drop an item. Your hands just don't necessarily go like that.
But in that situation, you still have the connection from the brain to the body.
Yeah, you do. And that's an excellent point. I don't think I've ever had, to the best of my knowledge, I've never had a case where somebody self-inflicted in the neck. I've had center mass in the chest. That happens a lot. Sternal area like that. But that's not necessarily going to impact the spinal cord. Okay.
So that's certainly something that's going to have to get cleared up at trial, like what the timeline of that was, for sure.
I got a question. I'd love to know, have you heard anything about the status of the clothing? Is that something that has been discussed, or because I got just watching this right now, I would love to know what happened to that freedom shirt.
Yeah, we all would.
Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.